participating today have been part of the previous two sessions also. And as you have already rightly introduced, that we have spoken a lot about how to conduct the lower order thinkings and the higher order thinking, and uh, achieve the learning outcomes in any topic, in any subject. That's what has been the discussion. We have also spoken in details about the competency statements that are required for any particular class. Having said that, when we talk of conducting teaching learning outcomes, and when we talk of conducting a teacher's activity and a student activity, what plays a vital role is the constructive alignment, where we say that outside the classroom, a teacher creates learning outcomes, smart learning outcomes. I believe all of us remember what is the mnemonics for smart. Then we also say that the smart learning outcomes are to be aligned with what sort of activities are to be taken, and also with what kind of assessments can be taken. And that's not the end to it. We, as teachers, educationists, and the students of our classroom, are in a continuous process of learning. So it's not only that our students learn, it is also that we as teachers learn every day while we take ahead the teaching learning process. Like, this is my third session with you. I have learned a lot from the teachers, and we have incorporated it so that the teaching learning process becomes easy. So, as you see, the topic of today's discussion is also feedback. Feedback plays a vital role for us educationists and teachers to improve, especially when it is an engaging classroom. So, with that, I would like to start, and I think many of our teachers have already joined. So, let's start with it. Today's discussion will mainly comprise of types of assessment. We as educationists, we cannot go ahead without assessing our students. By default, whenever we are teaching something, immediately we go and see whether the child is able to develop the concept knowledge on it or not. So, we'll discuss today briefly about what can be the types of assessment when we talk of activity based learning, what can be the rubric of measuring the student's development or growth, gradual progressive growth when it talks of activity based learning. And we will discuss a very few examples of activity based learning through different topics, how we can do and how we can assess. And we are also trying to see that how calculative we can be while we give them feedback, how much a child can gain, that is what we call as the constructive feedback, and also whether a student or a learner or me as a teacher is able to develop through the process of feedback, which is called as the feedback loop. So let's start. So this was all about today's agenda. Now, as you know, we always interact a lot, and I keep on throwing my questions to you, and you are open to write in the chat box. And already you have been introduced to the chat box. You know how efficient it is and how strong it can be to the facilitator of the workshop. So, my first question to you is, what is the most memorable learning experience you have had as a student, and why do you think it is most memorable? So, please write down this answer in the chat box. So, you can write the answer in two parts. First part, what has been the most memorable learning experience? And dash, why has it been the most memorable experience? Whatever, there is no right and wrong answer, and I would request and urge everybody to write it in the chat box. I'll read out a few answers that you write. My favorite learning moment. Okay, played a game. It was enjoyable. Excellent. So, game based learning is something that you have enjoyed. Yes, I also remember there was as a teacher, I had taken my students out. There was an English teacher who was absent, and I was given to supervise the classroom. And I saw that students were not ready to read from the textbook. I took the wickets and the bats and the ball, and I took them, formed two groups. They learned and then we completed the topic. So game is always fun. Game activity based learning, math work, learning by doing, experiment, playway, okay, circle learning, okay, nature learning. I loved grammar, group activities, my drawing skills, okay, game based learning and quizzes based on learning, lab and activity based learning, teaching, learning with activity. Teachers, I am really wondering if you are writing everything related to activity based learning based on today's topic. That's not what we had thought of. Actually, I had thought that you will just share your childhood experience and nothing. Okay, nature walk, science fair, game based activity, taking out of the class. Really, I mean, going to school in the morning and staying there till the afternoon. Yes, we should sometimes. So it's picture based learning, computer lab classes, anecdotes, okay, stories on the playground, understanding, okay, game activity, okay, spending time with teachers and friends. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing these, what has been the most memorable learning part. So, annual day fun, yes, card making, yes. So, none of us wrote anything about any particular subject, but we have written about the process, right? So what I can see and you all can read from the chat is something that stays with us is what we are doing, right? How we are conducting it. That means as a teacher or as an educator, what how we are going to take a session ahead or take a learning ahead in the classroom, what type of activity we should design. Should we do it from the textbook or should we take them to the nature visit as an experiential learning? Should we take them to the labs or should we take them for some community visit becomes very critical. I wrote about science. Okay. So, okay, yes. So everything is related to how we group. What I found out from your answers that you have written in the chat box is we are not seeing ourselves separately, we are seeing ourselves as a group. That means what becomes imperative to us as a takeaway one for this from this particular session and from the sharing that we have got is uh, something that brings all the friends together, facilitated by the teacher, that is collaboration, nature visit, the walk. These are activities which we can think of will make the learning very easy. Yeah. Morning circle time and activity and games. Very nice. So let me come to your next question. What has been scarier? Okay, teacher, as a take yourself back as students, as learners when you were in the class. And the question is, what is that used to scare you so much? Exams or the day of the report card? Is it exam that used to scare you that I have to go and sit for my maths exam? I have to go and sit for my physics exam? Or is it math lectures were scarier? Or is it that the report cards were scarier because the parents would go for the PTA meeting? Report card days, okay, okay, okay. Exams, report card, both, ma'am. This is a very exams, okay. Okay, report card. So it's all equal. If I had done a poll over here, I would have got the same thing, I think. My memory in history, report card days. Okay, report card days, math exam. Okay, so I've got ample and more answers, but then I can see, I think somewhere report card is getting a high gradually. And the subject which is dreaded most is, I feel, mathematics. So, yes, I can understand. We all have gone through this. Though me today, we have become maths teachers and physicists and whatnot. But actually, both somebody has written. Complete the portion on time. Okay, okay, okay. I think some of us are still giving the answer for the first one. Anyway, so as students, we had our own journey If it is a maths exam, then it is the scariest result we will see later on. But if we have given all the exams well, then that parent teacher meeting day on which the report card would be given would be really scary. And those next few days also would be very scary. All of a sudden, we would become some very disciplined students following the rules and regulations of the household, and then gradually becoming going back to the square one days. Okay, so thank you so much for sharing both the questions, and I think that was good enough for us to be in the session. And when we are talking of assessment and feedback, I'm going to share with you a small form, okay, in which there are few 10 questions, only 10 questions, the answers of which will not be, the marks of which will not be shared with anybody. I have pasted the link in the chat box. Can you kindly go there and uh, click on that link? I'm going on clicking the link so that you can find it. Click on the link and complete the form. We'll have just around some 5 minutes for that, whatever you feel is correct, because we have done this through the process. Please start. I think all of you are able to avail the form. It's the link is pasted in the chat box. In case you are not able to avail, please let me know. Let me know in the chat box. Then I'll share it once again. As soon as you finish, teachers, you can just give me a thumbs up so that I can understand. Please share. Okay. I've shared it. Palak ma'am, I have shared it. Okay. I'm just sharing the link one again. Come to the chat box. You will get the link. I've reshared. We'll have 5 minutes for this form. Progress card was scarier for you. Very true. Thank God now we have become teachers and educationists. We don't go through the report card cycles. Teachers, I have shared a form link in the chat box. Please go through that and invest uh, 5 minutes. Okay, I've started getting responses. Already 9 responses have reached me. That means teachers are able to uh, access the form. Thank you so much. I'll wait for 4 more minutes. Uh, Prerna ma'am, I think you must not have got the link. I have shared the link. Shalini ma'am, I have shared the link once again. Wow, I've already got 42 responses. Thank you so much. Teachers, those of you were filling up this form, how did you feel about it? Was it scary? Was it like overwhelming? Did it make you angry? How did you feel? And then after that, when you have got the marks, no problem. I must have received your form. I thought you have not received the link. That's why I took your name. How did you feel when you were all of a sudden given a questionnaire to solve, and then you are given a time limit and said in 5 minutes you have to complete this? Is it overwhelming? It is scary. One teacher has written it is scary. Yeah. Why should it be? Oh, somebody has written it's sad. Okay, made me think a lot. Okay. Happy and excited. Very nice. All the answers looked equally correct. Yeah, sometimes, yes. When it's multiple choice, we sometimes have to test our luck. Happy, challenging, okay. Yes, scary, a bit little scary, okay, okay. Happy, very scary and excited, okay. Challenging, excited and sad. It was exciting. Anxiety, anxiety. No, no, you all are excellent teachers and have already got 201 responses. That's a wow. Thank you so much. It was challenging. One more minute, we'll wait and then proceed with the new content. It was confusion. Voice is feeble. Shubham, are you able to hear me well?
Yeah, no issue in that.
Thank you. Thank you. Challenging, interesting, excited. Yeah. Yeah, so we'll get back now to the content. Interesting, interesting. Okay, there's a lot of mixed feelings that has been shared about test your memory. Naturally, so when we as teachers we know such a lot of it, and we are asked all of a sudden overwhelmed with a questionnaire, and then a timeline is also given that you have to complete it in 5 lines, 5 minutes. It becomes challenging and overwhelming for us as educationists. See, we know all the answers. Still, when somebody tells it is an assessment, you have to give a test and you have to do it in 5 minutes, it is very disturbing all of a sudden, right? Same is the condition of the little students who come to us and they do not know what the ma'am is teacher is going to give, what am I going to score, how are my parents going to take the score. So it's always for us, whenever we are giving something, let us first experience, and that was the only objective why I had planned this assessment for you, so that we can get a feel of actually what's happening when it goes to the students. Some teacher had mentioned something very valuable. It said that learned to accept mistakes. I really appreciate this answer that had come up on the text box. See, it's not that we as educationists also are doing 100% good work. Maybe in this 10 marks, some of us have scored 5, some of us have scored 10, some of us have scored 7. So, those of us who could not score 10 on 10, it's actually a time for us to think back, not that where have I lost those 5 marks, but also what a child goes through when the child has to give an assessment and the child doesn't score. So, it is a lot to do with and empathy also when it comes to assessment and feedback. So, when today we'll be discussing about assessment and how to give a feedback to a learner, we will definitely keep in mind that the first activity that we did today in our session was to accept that I have not scored a 10 on 10. So is a child in my class. So, how do I deal with that? And with that, thank you so much, teachers. It's already 312 teachers who have attempted it, and we'll proceed with this next part. Now, the question is, what, according to you, is an assessment? Okay. I'm giving you 4 options. The first one is a process of determining a student's ability to perform a task. Second option, a tool for measuring a student's knowledge and skills. Third, a strategy for improving student motivation. And fourth, a process of evaluating both a teacher and a student's performance. So, what you have to do, teacher, over here for this question, which according to you best defines assessment, you have to write down which, according to you, is the correct answer. Just write the number. You don't have to write the entire thing. One, two, three, or four. Just write the number. That's it. Okay. I'll wait for some time and then we'll discuss the answers.
Mostly four is the answer teachers are
Yes.
putting.
Yes. Correct. Yes. Some places one or two, it's three. One I got one and two. Okay. Okay. So we have thought enough, and let us now discuss what should be the right answer. Those of us who have written four, a big clap to you all. See, assessment is not about testing a child with a lens or testing a judging a child how much the child knows. It is also about how well I have done as a teacher in contributing towards a student's learning. If I say that my child in a science paper has scored 50%, that means the child has not scored 50%. The 50 marks in a paper of 10 marks, if a child gets 5, then the rest of the 5 is missing. So this rest of the 5 corresponds to amount of learning. That is, half of the learning the child could not understand. So it helps me gauge as a teacher that did I go wrong somewhere, considering that the child had done the work, the teacher had done the work very well. In spite of that, if the child is not able to answer half of the things, where is the problem? Therefore, the answer is a process of evaluating both students and teachers' performance. So, all of us, those who have answered four, is the correct answer. Now, let us take why these answers are incorrect for 1, 2, and 3. A process of determining a student's ability to perform a task. No, that is not true. Because we have different methods of assessment that we'll be judging now. When it is a group activity, the group performs, so individualistic approach does not come here. Also, a child will perform based on how I, as a teacher, has performed. Therefore, it is imperative for me to understand that it is my assessment also happening at the same time. It is not the child's assessment alone. Okay? So the fourth answer is the correct answer. Those of you have given the correct answer, a very big clap to you. Now let's proceed with the next part. So, how do we define assessments? Assessments are tools or methods used to measure or evaluate a student's knowledge, skills, and abilities as well in a particular subject or area. They are essential components of education, providing feedback to both students and teachers about learning progress, identifying areas for improvement, and informing instructional decisions. So, here, if you read the definition, the role of both the teacher and the student comes true. Those of you who are availing it from the mobile or maybe from the laptop, you can take screenshots of this. This is permitted. Now, assessments are also used to evaluate the effectiveness of teaching strategies. How well a particular strategy, for example, you are doing a think, pair, share activity, and you took an assessment after the activity was done, and you found that not many students could respond correctly to the answer, to the question. So, I, as a teacher, I need to think back and think back whether the process was correct or should I use some other method of teaching, some other strategy for teaching, and then see whether the student learning outcome is better or not. So, it helps me understand by seeing the marks. So, assessments are for both the teachers and the students. Now, I would like you to share your thoughts on assessment largely is marks. Or assessment, always, whenever we think of assessment, what comes to our mind is marks. How much has the child got? What percentage has the child got? So, share your thoughts if I say assessment is equal to marks. Do you agree to this or you disagree to this? And if you disagree, why do you disagree? Please write it down in the chat box. You can see that orange color on the right hand side, it's written chat box. So whenever that comes, whatever you feel, you can share over here. Is assessment equivalent to marks? You disagree. Okay, why do you disagree, teachers? If you can write, Most of you are disagreeing to why is assessment not equal to marks. So it's not equal to marks and you are disagreeing largely. So can any two or three of our participants write why you disagree? Why do you disagree that assessment is not equivalent to marks? Okay, very nice. Some participant, some teacher has written that less marks does not mean less knowledge. Excellent. We are not judging exactly. I disagree. Yeah, because assessments we get, some students have difficulty in some skill. It is on the child's thought. Assessment is not, it includes rubrics. Marks can be scored. Less marks doesn't mean less knowledge. We can't judge, means overall development. Okay, so if I can summarize that teachers overall have expressed disagreement in the statement that assessment is not marks. So if we as educationists are disagreeing, therefore the same thing should be cascaded to our 21st century students as well. Like you have shared over here, and if I may summarize, you have said assessment is not always marks, assessment is skill development, assessment is not always knowledge, assessment is development of attitude also. And if the marks are less, does not mean the child is not developing or the child does not know anything. Very true. It is an overall development, is what is assessment. Some of you have written. And assessment does not mean it is a tool to compare a child with others. Very true. So I agree to what all you have written. It is not about judging, it is not about the memorizing capacity, and it is trying to measure a skill, and it is a very individualistic approach. So we should not, you must be aware now, many of the boards are going towards giving the grades instead of marks so that there is less competition. It's there. So see, we all as educationists, we know that assessment is not equal to marks, but it is for us as teachers also to share it with our students that don't feel scared about assessments. It is just a process of formation. You know, when you are learning a particular topic, how good are you learning? Where are the gaps that you can bridge? That is what is an assessment. So assessment is, of course, knowledge is important. Some teacher has written knowledge is important, but then we cannot make it equivalent to the marks. Thank you so much, teachers, for sharing. Now when we are talking of assessment, now let us think of a scenario. So in a school there is a science fair disaster. Okay, and when I have already said disaster, you must have understood that something has gone wrong. So what is it that it has gone wrong? Let us see step by step. See, in a bustling high school science fair, students from all grade levels have spent weeks preparing their projects. This is what our students also do during an annual program. Now, the problem that happened was the school's power supply suddenly fails, leaving the entire fair in darkness. Projects that rely on electricity are rendered useless. So the problem was a power cut, and the students failed. This is a possibility. There is a possibility that when you are taking an assessment in a school, there may be some festival going on beside your school, and there will be mics blowing at the top of the intensity, and the child is not able to concentrate. The child lost marks while writing the answers or while calculating the numbers. The child loses marks. How are you going to judge the child? Will in this case you say that the child could not perform because the child doesn't know? Do you say that? I don't think so. We can say that, right? So the question is, what went wrong? You saw the situation. I'll show you the situation once again, that our students had prepared at their level best, but the problem was that there was power failure, So all those projects which were dependent on electricity could not perform. And those projects, they did not score definitely. So how are you going to say what went wrong? Is it the child? Yes, the children did not fail. Correct. Some teacher has written here, children did not fail. Yes. I would request other teachers, situation was fail, not the students. And I think many of you will agree to the fact that there are times when we rush with the portion. There are times when a child falls sick. There are times when a teacher falls sick. The situation was not good. Many students could not reach the school because there were heavy rainfall. Many students could not reach the school because there was an unforeseen condition in the child's house, or maybe the trains were stopped, the buses could not. These are all situational. These are all situations. But ultimately, what got affected was the percentage in the report card. So many people who are observing outside will think that that particular child did not score because the knowledge was less. So this assessment becomes a report card or a certificate of how good, how intelligent, or how weak the child is, which is obviously not true. I understand we as educationists, we deal with the students, we deal with the report card, we deal with the parent teachers meeting, and we deal with the situation outside. But not everyone is empathetic towards that. However, we have to, from our part as teachers or as educationists, ensure that whosoever is having a wrong notion about assessment should be very clearly brought in the minds of those people who are commenting on. Now, the next question is, what could have been done to avoid this situation? What could have been done to avoid this situation? That the students failed, students could not show the projects which were based on electricity. What could have been done to avoid this situation? You will write it down in the chat box, teachers, and I'll be reading it out. What could you as a teacher do over there when there was a science fair? A backup plan, yes. Redo the exam, excellent. Management, aware of these situations, given a second chance. Generator backup, power backup, excellent. I would request other teachers, and we could not have used this type of unexpected parameters for assessment. Very true. Well, planning, yes. Backup plan, re-exam, yes. Thank you so much. So what I tried to bring in through this is, when we are telling that there is an assessment, do I also have a backup plan for those students who are not able to perform? Does our education system allow us an alternate solution? Does, or is it that an exam is given means a child is getting tagged? Is it that we are having that notion in our mind? See, when we as teachers, we go to the classroom, we expect that all the students will perform better than the previous exam or previous class, or show improvement is what we are expecting. The first term, second term, third term, or the first unit, second unit, third unit, the marks should improve is the expectation, and which is right. The learning should improve, the knowledge should improve, the child skill building, the capacity, the ability, the attitude, everything should be on a higher rank with progression. Progressively the child should improve. But then the question is, what is the reality? The reality is, during the first term exams, the results were contrary to the expectations, right? So when you had started with the class, you were evaluating the students, and then when the first term exam came, you saw that the marks were not good. So in these 3 months of a term, when you saw that the marks were not good, was the reality, and it was against your expectation, my question is, What as a teacher could you do to, you know, avoid this situation? Anything that you could have done, like you have written over here, giving a second chance by taking a re-exam. Okay, first make the child comfortable and then applaud for the efforts. Okay, very nice. What could you do as a teacher to avoid this situation? Manage remedial. Okay, okay. What else can you do? Drilling. Okay, drilling. Find out what went wrong. Yes, find out what went wrong. Remedial. Prepare the child and then assess. Okay, give more practice. Remedial class, extra care, daily observations. Yes. So that's what I was also coming to, that, you know, when we as teachers, we as parents, we as school management, we as an external third person, we are always expecting something that may not come to reality. However, we as teachers play a very responsible role in bringing up the expectation and the reality match, because finally we have to make our students ready for the future. Finally, we should also ensure that the child is able to learn, take the new knowledge, and apply the new knowledge in a situation. Therefore, like all of you have written over there, that give them more practice, give them more worksheets, assess, take care, applaud, appreciate if they are gradually learning, make them understand, make them do some group activities, involve in other activities, assess by involving in activities. So I'll take all of some of what I have just now read, and also what teachers are, still going on writing: scaffolding, individual attention, more practice. So if I sum up all these things, is we have to have a periodic check in the progress, whether the child is improving in the timelines or not. Suppose I'm a very weak student, you as my teacher, you are supposed to improve me. That's why I'm coming to you every day, right? So you will have a plan for me, that if Shrudipa is supposed to improve, and Shrudipa is very weak in maths, however, she can speak English well, comprehend, write the answers well. So the focus area has to be on the subject where she needs more attention, special attention, and continuously giving me more, periodic check questions, giving me more remedial classes, giving me more of practice worksheets and attention. You will try to bring out a plan wherein you can develop me. Okay, less work should be given to a weak student is something different. I can take these as a different kind of approach that can be given based on what is my type of learning, that is what type of learner I am. According to the VARK model, am I a visual learner, am I an auditory learner, or am I a kinesthetic learner, or I'm a person who is reading and learning? Based on that, if you can assess, you can do some remediation for me. This is based on what teachers were writing, I responded. Okay, so when I say we have to have a periodic check, we are talking of periodic assessments. So now coming to assessments, we have assessments for learning. So teachers, what do you understand when you say assessment for learning? I would request you to write it down on the in the chat box. What do you mean by assessment for learning? Okay, what is assessment for learning? You all follow assessment for learning. What is assessment for learning? If you can write it down in the chat box, I'll read it out for all of us. Assessment for learning, some teachers are writing formative assessments. Okay, some are writing worksheets, some are writing process of learning. It's evaluating child's memory, how far the child is able to understand. formative assessment, applying their knowledge, worksheet, checking whether in form of short exam, okay, formative. Most of you are writing formative assessment, okay. Assessment for learning. What is assessment for learning? Take small tests on every topic, check the learning outcomes, okay. How much the child is able to grasp in the learning process. Informal assessment, okay. Improve student learning. Oral assessment, activity based, formative, continuous learning development. Okay, thank you so much, teachers, for sharing. Now I'm coming to a very similar phrase, that is assessments of learning. What do you mean by assessments of learning? See, these are so very similar, assessment for learning and assessments of learning. If you would write assess, what is assessment of learning? Yeah, think and write how far the student has. Summative assessment, some of you have written summative assessment. Home test, home test, I'm considering it as a homework. Marks, activity based on the topic, how much the students have understood, okay. So see, assessment for learning and assessment of learning are two very separate things. Assessment for learning is, what is the purpose of that? The purpose of that is to improve the learning process, and assessment of learning means what have you learned, measuring the learning outcomes. When do we take assessment for learning? Assessment for learning is taken throughout the learning process, and assessment of learning is taken at the end of a learning period. For example, the formative and the summative. So, when we do formative assessment, we can do it based on observation, questioning, we can take exit tickets, we can just judge them orally, we can map their behavior in an activity based, we can even journal down how a child is growing, how is the behavior, the attitude, the values, the skills are improving. But when it comes to assessment of learning, that is measuring the learning outcomes, there will be some standardized tests. That is, you can say the terminal exams, you can say the final exams, you can say the board exams, you can say the cumulative exams at the end of the exam, and this is certainly going to be based on some criteria of marks. So I would request teachers to take down a screenshot of this assessment for learning and assessment of learning. This is very important for us. Now, coming to the next part is, what is the purpose of assessment in activity based learning? When we tell activity based learning, it is that a lot of students are engaged in something which is called learning by doing. It is a student centered approach where maybe a teacher has given a problem, or teacher has asked the students to come up with an idea, or maybe uh, they are replicating an experiment that is already there, or they are trying to do a sum and peer assess each other, or maybe they have been divided into groups and given some assignment on which they are working together, and they'll come up with a solution or a demonstration at the end as a group. Now, when we say activity based learning and assessing an activity based learning, what are we actually doing? We are monitoring the students' progress, definitely. We are providing them with a formative feedback that whether the child's formation of concept on a particular topic is happening or not. I am also, as a teacher, evaluating the effectiveness of activities, and I am assessing the students' understandings and skills. So, when I am doing an assessment, like we started discussing in the beginning itself, That assessment is for both the teacher and the student. Here you see, I'm monitoring the student's progress as well as I am monitoring how effective is the activity that is being done. Okay, so here some of one teacher has written over here in the chat box, making learning effective. That's very true. Making learning effective both for the teacher and the student. Now, the types of assessments that we have in activity based learning. So, we have these four main types of activity based learning: formative, summative, peer assessment, and self assessment. Formative assessment and summative assessment is something that we all mostly know, right? Formative assessment is, both of them are assessing the learning, both are used for feedback and both are used for future planning of the students' progress and also how the method is working or not working. Formative assessments are generally taken in small chunks, bits and pieces, in the form of quizzes, observations, homework, classwork, the charts creation, the Venn diagram, the mind map creation, which are very small activities. While summative assessments are the assessment at the end of the year for our students, which we call as the term exams, standardized assessments, which can be the board exams, the district exams. Sometimes, when there are group schools like yours, the papers may be exchanged. One school prepares the paper and the other school does, or maybe from a centralized content team, the paper is created and it is circulated to all the schools. So, both the formative assessment and summative assessment assess learning, and both can be used as a feedback for the journey ahead, right? Now, as teachers, we perform the best, right? We see, we evaluate, we are revisiting how we have taught, how our students have learned, and we are going on improving ourselves. We are using the feedback very well. In spite of doing such a good work as a teacher, in spite of taking the formative and the summative assessments, are there students in your class who are not improving in a few subjects, critical subjects, or maybe in one particular subject? Have you noticed such students? If yes, then please put a yes in the chat box. And also, why do you think the child is not improving? Can you just write it in the chat box? So the question is, in spite of doing everything, students are not improving. Why do you think? So many of you are writing yes, and that's a very, for fact, this is true. Now, my next question to you is, why do you think they are not improving? Are you aware of why the students are not improving? There is irregularity, students need special attention, extra class, learning disabilities, lack of concentration, basic is lacking, slow learner, not active in the class, irregularity, dislike for a particular subject, lack of attention, no attention, lack of concentration, not interested. Okay, learning disability. Okay, thank you so much, teachers, that you have thought through. Half of our problems happen because we do not diagnose what the disease is. I'm so happy that most of you are already thinking through, and some of you have already given the reason. So, if given a chance, I think you all have seen this is happening and you all know the reason behind this. You know the reason behind this is because you have tried to find why. For us as educationists and also as teachers, it is very important that we have an attention towards those students also who, in spite of giving so much of time and inputs, are not improving. So, what one solution approach can be is, can we have a diagnostic assessment done at the beginning of the year? right? When you do a diagnostic assessment at the beginning of the year, you will find where the child was in comparison to the previous grade. And also, what you can do is you can have a discussion in the beginning of the session. So when one year academic session ends and the next academic session is going to begin, you have around 10-15 days while you correct the answer sheets, get the report cards ready, get the next year's classroom ready, get the next year's planner ready. That's when you can discuss. We do it at the end of every chapter some teacher has written. Thank you so much. So diagnostic assessment will be very important, and if we are doing this kind of a good job, like after every topic or after every concept we are having a diagnostic assessment mapped with the previous year's knowledge, whether the child is grade appropriate or not, it will certainly help us to plan the topics well, right? And also we'll understand who are those students who lack the problem, who lack the knowledge. Therefore, when we talk of assessment, the best and the easiest and the safest thing is: one, let us start a particular topic, concept, or an academic session mapped with a diagnostic test of the last year's and this year's connected topics. Second, after every topic, let us have the formative assessments done for the students, and after certain intervals, periodically, let us have the summative assessments done. This is what will support us. But this is not all, right? So let us have some examples of how this can be taken. If you have some suggestion, you can put it in the chat box. Like, for example, understanding our past. If I take a very simple example of history, understanding our past is a topic in history. Why a diagnostic assessment is to be done? So that I can understand as a teacher where my child is. The purpose is to determine the prior knowledge and also misconceptions. So there are two things. First is you understand where the child is, and you also understand that is the child, is the learner coming with some misconceptions in the mind. Is if the child is coming with a misconception, then we have to drive away the misconception and then proceed, right? So there are typical strategies which can help us. So we can have simple questions like true and false, multiple choice, short answers for finding out the diagnostic, for performing the diagnostic assessment, right? So for example, is it true that the sun is a big ball of cheese? So it's a very simple question: is it true or is it false? So if you can understand somebody is writing a true, it is true that sun is a big ball of cheese, then I think we have to go back to the student and ask, why do you think so? There will be very few students. It will be very easy for us to find out those students. We can have multiple choice questions where we can understand how far the child is able to understand and apply the knowledge. And also we can have some very short questions, whether simple differences between simple things which will lay the foundation of your this year's topic can be part of the question. So diagnostic assessment has to be kept very short. It can be a 1 mark question, right? Now coming to the next is the formative assessment. Formative assessments is for the child's learning progress, which provides an immediate feedback to the teacher as well as to the student, whether the class is able to understand what I am teaching, whether I as a learner is able to understand what my teacher is teaching. So instead of going after 3 months on a summative assessment, let us have assessment in chunks, which can be called as the formative assessment. So there can be some exit slips, draw a picture of a castle. Why do animals, why do you think lived in the forest long ago? What animals, which are those animals? So they can draw only one animal which they think. Okay, think, pair, and share activity. They can have quizzes, different types of quizzes, simple quizzes or edtech based quizzes. So this can be very simple question. Again, what will be the marks? It can be of 1 or 2 marks, right? Now coming to summative assessments. Summative assessments are will depend on longer knowledge based questions. The Bloom's taxonomy has to be followed. We have done this in details. We have also done what type of action words can be used. Summative assessments will, along formative assessment also, and summative assessment definitely should be able to reach the learning outcomes, should be able to meet with the learning outcomes successfully. So, summative assessments will evaluate the student's overall understanding of a topic. It can be like, for example, compare and contrast, where you go to analyze level. Project, create a timeline. So it can be a create level. It can be a role play where they apply the knowledge in a new situation. So your summative assessment should be completely based on your learning outcomes. And I urge you all to follow the Bloom's taxonomy, the levels of Bloom's taxonomy, the action words of Bloom's taxonomy, and the learning outcomes and the assessment should be completely mapped so that you can achieve the student learning outcome as a teacher, right? So we have discussed the three main types of assessment, that is the formative, summative, and the diagnostic. The summative assessments can be of 2 marks, 3 marks, and in some cases it may be even more, where we may bifurcate each learning or each skill identification into small. Suppose there is a 4-mark question where you have two parts of 2 marks, two questions, sub questions. So 2 marks plus 2 marks makes up a 4 marks, where you are able to align one learning outcome. So it has to be done very thoughtfully. It will carry marks, and it is definitely going to be a large part of our progress check as teachers, and also the report card of the child. So it has to be very mindfully done. Now, what do you think are the benefits of activity based learning? Right? So we are coming to what can be the type of assessments. Before that, let us discuss about the benefits. Why do we at all do the activity based learning? What are the benefits? If you can share in the chat box, I'll be reading it out. What are the benefits of activity based learning? Okay, real life situation, understanding, learning, learned fast, help the students to learn and understand. Experiential learning, real life situation, students can understand easily, enhance learning. There are many types of learners, very true. So, going by the VARK model, activity based learning also can be differentiated, and we are going to discuss on that. Effective learning, less scary, okay, because this is not individualistic, it is realistic. Students observe easily. Periodic check to understand whether the learning is progressive. Okay, thank you so much. It's learning by doing, so it stays with them. Thank you so much, teachers, for sharing the benefits of activity based learning. So, if you look at this, this is the learning pyramid, right? The learning pyramid, you can see the parts. So we are able to fortunately encompass all of what we have shared in the text box. You have spoken about the different types of learners, and see here we have it in the picture. The active learning and passive learning part. Let's look at that first. Now you can see here the bar that shows active learning and passive learning. Lecture method, if just I'm going on giving a lecture as a teacher, that is only 5% effective. If a child reads it, it's only 10% effective. Even sometimes we consider, we teachers and school sometimes have a misconception that let us show them a video, learning video, some educational video, audio visual mode, that is only 20% effective. Let us take them to the lab and let us show them some demonstration. Definitely, it is something to appreciate that teachers are not reading out experiments from the textbooks and taking them to the lab. However, Unfortunately, that is also just 30% effective. When you discuss and brainstorm on a particular topic, that brings out a lot of thoughts, that brings out a lot of new knowledge. Some child who did not know about this starts speaking, starts getting, starts enjoying, starts participating. So, a lot of skills develop. Discussion is 50% effective. Practice doing is 75% effective, but the most effective one is teaching others. So when we talk of teaching others, we are talking of, peer led activities. When I am helping you do an activity, or in a group where we brainstorm and bring out things, where we do peer instruction, that why is the answer incorrect, I am explaining it to my peer, I am evaluating my peer with a reason, and say why is this, incorrect. I'm giving a proper reason. That's when it remains in the mind of the learner, the peer. Also, it has been seen that students learn better from other students in comparison to the teachers. So there are many difficult skills that a teacher cannot teach, but a peer, a friend, can teach. Therefore, teaching others or teaching a peer definitely helps them. And while the child is teaching another child, when one student is teaching another student, the person goes through a process of self questioning. What am I going to respond or reply when the other person questions me? So there is a continuous critical thinking that happens, brainstorming that happens. Now, again, if you see on the left hand side, there are these types of learners where active learning, that is the discussion, practice doing, and teaching others, are liked and loved by kinesthetic learners. So if you do a very diagnostic test of the type of learners in the beginning of the session itself, that is excellent. Even if you fail to do, forget to do, or cannot manage time to do, you can understand by seeing the group dynamics, how are the students behaving in the group activities, that if they are liking discussions, if they are participating, if they are coming to debates, if they are participating correctly, following the rules and norms of the debate, if they are doing a practice teaching, or if they are peer evaluating, then they are kinesthetic learners who learn by doing. If a person is looking at a demonstration that you are performing, or looking at the sum, or looking at the way you are solving the sum and replicating it, looking at a diagram that is already there on the board and trying to replicate the diagram, they are visual learners. They are learning from your actions or a friend's action. Auditory learners are those learners who will be very interested in the audio visual aids, like what we put. For example, we take them to a AV class or a computer classroom, and we explain them, right? Or when I'm continuously speaking and you are loving to listen to me without doing much, then you are the auditory learners, right? So based on the type of behavior a child shows, also you can assess what type of learners are there. However, it is said that it is a proven fact that learning by doing, that is active learning strategy, stays with the students. Now, let's think of our classroom where the students are engaged in an activity based learning. What all interactions do you notice? Okay, I'm showing you two pictures. You have to just write down what all activities are you noticing. You write it down in the chat box. I will read out the answer. Audio-visual techniques, making learning easy. Teamwork, okay. Building creatively, okay.
Bonding and sharing,
Okay,
caring.
yes. Thank you, Shubham, for part. Reading
peer
job.
learning, observing others, well engaged, individual work, gross motor, sorting, collaboration, full concentration, group activity, concentration, ideas.
Gross motor skill development. Very
Yes.
nice. Teamwork, sharing, and
Problem
caring. Thank you
solving.
so much, teachers. Very practical, and we can understand that you all are very observant in the classroom. Thank you so much for sharing, and that brings us to the building the plinth of what we say is how important is activity based learning. So activity based learning brings such a lot of 21st century learning skills integrated, that if you design an activity based classroom, an activity for a particular topic, you design it with a lot of attention, or even if you give a less attention to a particular type of learning, also it happens. Like, you may think that I want to achieve this particular objective, but along with that objective so many other objectives also get fulfilled. This is the beauty of activity based learning. So excellent sharing, and I feel all of us are into it, therefore we are able to share. Here comes peer assessment. So we have already discussed about, yes, something that has come up is freedom. Yes, that's true. When we do activity based learning, we are learning by doing, and we are doing it by brainstorming. Therefore we have the freedom to think about a particular topic and do it with our own creative skills. Okay, now we have discussed about formative and summative assessments. Now we come to peer assessments, and that's the reason why I was repeatedly asking you how important is a peer, or really there is an importance of the peer. So, what is peer assessment? Peer assessment is a process where students evaluate each other's work. It improves the students providing feedback to the classmates' assignments, projects, or presentations. This can be done in a variety of ways. Okay, so you can share with the students a rubric which says that how are you going to see? Are you going to see the handwriting, or are you going to see whether the sentences are written grammatically correct, or are you going to see the punctuation marks, or are you going to see the proper use of adjectives? So the rubric is provided by the teacher. That is the maximum that the teacher will do. That is a facilitation. I do this with grade 1. Thank you so much, teachers. Parul ma'am has written that she does it with grade 1. Excellent. Checklist. Students use a checklist to evaluate whether their peers have met with certain requirements. Okay, so they just put a tick mark, or they see whether the friend peer has done this or not. Third is written feedback. Students provide written comments to the peers' work, where we have to facilitate and see whether both the glow and the grow are coming up or not. So, when the child gives a feedback to the students, it should not become a complaint. First, the glows, that what have you done well, should come. That is called the glow, GLOW. That should come up. Or you can write roses and thorns. That is also a good way of saying that roses are what you have done very well, and thorns are the pain points, or the grows are the scope of your growth or improvement, where the child will be writing a feedback. So it is our duty to see whether the feedback is written in these two patterns or not, starting from the positive and very subtly coming down to what can be improved upon. Also, next comes to oral feedback. So when a child gives a feedback, or even when we give a feedback to the child, it is always that the positive should come first. It should never be that you bring in a negative thing. It is very overwhelming. The person who is listening to you may not be in a position to listen. So it can be a glow and a grow, GROW, or it can be roses and thorns. Roses means the beautiful things what you have done, and thorns means your pain points where you can grow. So these are the ways by which the peer assessment can be evaluated. It improves learning, it increases engagement, it develops critical thinking skills, both for the evaluator, the child, as well as the person who is getting evaluated, and builds collaboration. So, when a particular child, when I am able to learn from a peer, it brings in a collaboration with somebody with whom I was not even talking earlier. And it builds a bond, it builds confidence. So, next time I have some thorn in my work, I can go to that person and confidently ask, can you help me in this? Then I can go to the teacher if the child or the peer is not able to help. So, this is how we can bring in a good dynamics in the classroom. Now, this is the rubric for peer assessment. I would request teachers to take a screenshot of this. See, in the criteria on the left hand side, you can see content, organization, clarity, evidence, mechanics. On the top, you can see from the right, left onwards, do not meet expectations, and exceeds expectations. Okay. And here I'll read out only a first part. Suppose, for example, content does not meet expectation, does not fully address the topic, or provides inaccurate information. Something wrong has been written. Meets expectation is providing relevant information and analysis. Exceeds expectations means providing insightful analysis and original thought. Some originality has come up. The child has written something very well. So, this can be your three parameters: does not meet expectation, meets expectation, and exceeds expectation. Now, here in this particular content, I have brought content, organization, clarity, evidence, and mechanics from English. You can add what you want your students to improve on. That is your classroom. You know the best. What are the skills that you are looking at, or what is the knowledge piece or the attitude piece? What you are trying to look at is something you will have to decide as a teacher and implement it, right? So, till here, are we all clear with what all we have done? Yeah, can I just have a thumbs up so that I can proceed with the next part? Can we all just have a thumbs up? Are we all in? Are we all able to understand? May I get a feedback from you all? Thank you. I want some more. You can put a thumbs up, you can put heart, whatever is possible. Yes. Thank you so much. Okay. So before we look at the students, let us look at our own mirrors, right? So I have shared with you in the chat box one form for self introspection, just to see how you judge yourself. It's very critical for us that sometimes we take out time and we judge ourselves as well. We become so much teachers that we keep on judging others, and we become some kind of uh, teacher like, even at home, also in a professional as well as in a personal lives. So I have kept for you one form in the chat box. If you have all received it, can you kindly fill up that form for self introspection and just put a thumbs up? I have already shared the link. Have you all received it? No, you have not? Okay. Okay. Can you just do your self assessment and See, in this form, if you have noticed very well, I have not. Okay, I'll be resharing it for the teachers who have not received the form. I have reshared it in the chat box. Can you please check once again? Teachers, notice something that when I shared with you the forms, other forms, what I have been sharing, I have always shared what's your name. But when it came to self introspection, I did not ask you to share your name. I'll be just sharing I do not have the names of who has written what, because it is for you to assess yourself, not for me to assess you. That's why it's self introspection. And I'm sharing just the evaluation. You see, how effective do you feel your teaching strategies and engaging? So, teachers have responded on this. Are you satisfied with your ability to differentiate in instruction to meet the needs of diverse learners? You can see so many teachers have assessed themselves and very honestly are assessing themselves. So, you can see the increase in the graphs, right? Now, how well can do you incorporate technology in your classroom to enhance student learning? There are 66 responses, and you can see the graphs are growing, right? And I trust me, I do not know who has written what, because this is your self introspection. How confident do you feel in your ability to provide timely and constructive feedback? Yeah, you are very confident. How effective is your classroom management strategies? Teachers are very confident in the classroom management strategies, right? And how efficiently can you support the students who are, struggling academically? Teachers are very confident there also, right? So I'm really happy that we are thinking through. 151, 154 participants have already responded to it. I just wanted to discuss this because it is important for us to think through, and therefore, this activity of self introspection was kept so that we take out a bit of time during our sessions and we think through. Some of us may need to change the answers, never mind, you can change it later on also. It was just to bring to you that it is important for us to spend a little time and, you know, uh, think about ourselves, how I am doing, self evaluation. Therefore, comes the part of self evaluation in the student learning process also. What is self evaluation or self assessment? It is the process of evaluating one's performance, abilities, and progress. It improves reflection on your actions, behavior, and outcome to identify strength, weakness, areas of improvement, and overall effectiveness. So it makes you self aware as an individual, right? It improves your goal setting, it gives you motivation, it makes you a better performer. When we do not think about ourselves, we somehow kind of become very mechanical towards our work. We kind of start developing a lot of complicits, a lot of more than confidence. It can sometimes become overconfidence. So sometimes we need to sit back and just do nothing, just evaluate and introspect. Similar lines, we can improve our students also through their self assessment, right? What are the common methods by which they can do their own self assessment? That is, journals or log. Keeping a record of your thoughts, feelings, experiences. This is important. We had discussed in detail about the domains of learning, and there we said that according to Bloom's domains of learning, we have the cognitive domain, the psychomotor domain, and the affective domain. The affective domain is what actually deals with your thoughts, your feelings, your experience. That leads to your action. That leads to what you are as an individual. Right? So it is important that along with the knowledge piece, these things are also journalized. How am I improving? Reflection exercises, engaging students that prompt you to think critically about your performance. Do a SWOT analysis. I hope you all know what is a SWOT analysis. Can you kindly write down the full form of SWOT? Are you all aware of what is a SWOT analysis? SWOT, SWOT analysis. What is SWOT? What is SWOT? SWOT. Yes, S stands for strength, W stands for S stands for strength, weakness, opportunities, and threat. Excellent. One teacher has already given it to the. Is it possible to introduce a parent assessment? Of course, it is possible. See, a large part of the time a child spends at home, also, along with the time they spend with us. Also, they are doing a part of work. They are doing their revision, they are preparing for the exam, they get scared during exam, they overdo during exam. So parent assessment, parent can also assess the child and bring it to you to see whether you know the child is on the right track or not. That's also a good idea, parent assessment. And SWOT analysis is our teachers are writing. It's the strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. A child, a person, any individual, even if it is you as a teacher, even if it is me as a trainer, we should be able to do our SWOT, and our SWOT should improve on our strengths, reduce our weakness gradually with time. We should be able to identify our the threats that we have and should be able to work on the opportunities. And from a very early childhood, if you develop this habit of doing a SWOT analysis of the child learns to reflect, child learns to introspect. Feedback from others, seeking feedback from the colleagues, mentors, supervisors can give valuable insights to the colleagues, means friends. Okay, self rating scales. Where do I rate myself when it comes to mathematics? How good am I as performing in Hindi? So this kind of self rating will be very helpful for a child. So for us as facilitators, we have to give them these ideas that you are supposed to do this. Uh, do we in our curriculum anywhere in Oxford University Press Schools, do we anywhere in our content or curriculum, okay, follow this self assessment? Do we have any part of self assessment in any topic, in any part of the curriculum? Do you follow this? Can you recollect, or do we not follow this? Yes, we follow this. Where do we follow this? End of the chapter, okay? And what is the name of that? We follow this? Yes, we follow this. Is it this part of the chapter where we follow I can activities? See, this is a self assessment, right? And why is this a self assessment? Is suppose if I say order numbers up to 60, can do it on my own, I can do it with my the help, right? So if the child says I can do it with the help, is itself a SWOT for the child, or itself a self reflection? It is actually an emphasis on the self reflection part, and we should emphasize on doing this individually. You should only facilitate and see that everybody is doing it. You don't go to correct it. Later on, when you take the books, you can see who is actually where and then can support the muddy points. Okay. Now, when we come to the rubric for self assessment, here also we can, the criteria, if you can see: engagement, collaboration, problem solving, critical thinking, reflection, and self evaluation, right? So these are the parts of activity based learning. When you are doing activity based learning, this can be the criteria on which we can judge. And if I read out one rubric, that is the first one: needs improvement in engagement, has difficulty staying engaged, and may appear distracted. When I talk of meets expectation, participants in most activities and shows participates in most activities and shows some interest. And when I talk of exceeds expectation in engagement, actively participates in all the activities, shows enthusiasm, and asks thoughtful questions. So these type we can, do the self evaluation rubric or self assessment rubric. So you please take a screenshot of this slide and this slide both. However, when you will be getting the video, you will certainly be able to do it. So, peer group activities, we are not getting time. We have to complete our syllabus before holidays. Okay. Peer group activity actually eases out your work. When you are doing it in peers or when you are doing it in group, you have to assign majority responsibility to the students. So, let the students form groups one on one, and you can facilitate the process with certain instructions given that this is what has to be done, and then you can assess or evaluate. So planning, if you can plan it well, then I think the process will become very easy. Now let's discuss about a topic. Okay, we are taking up a primary level topic. You can see. Can you just guess what I'm going to discuss? What topic this is? What topic am I going to discuss? Germination. Okay. So I'm coming up with the first question. What objects are these? These are what objects are these? Seeds, plants, growth, germination. Okay, these are seeds. Thank you. Now, coming to the next question: what do you observe in the seeds? What have you observed in the seeds? These are seedlings, okay? What are you observing in the seeds? Growth, process of germination, okay? Sprouting has begun, okay? Growth, sprouting, okay? I'm taking the answer sprouting. Third, how will this activity be beneficial to the plant? How will this activity be beneficial to the plant? How will this activity be beneficial to the plant? To grow, process of growth, new plants to emerge. Okay, a new plant starts. Thank you so much. So I have taken these answers. How will this activity be beneficial to us? Real life connection. How will this activity be beneficial to us? I'm waiting for the answer for this fourth question. It will give us fruits, okay? It will give us nutrition. It will give us food.
Progress, founding growth to plant,
Okay.
to explain cycle of growth
Growth
of
of
plants.
plants. Okay, so I'm taking the answer. It will help us to get food or, fruits, however you had written. So these were the first questions that I started discussing. Now I'm going to play for you a video. You listen to this video. Just give me a moment. I'll be sharing the screen.
What is germination? When a seed is sown into moist soil, it begins to grow. This process is called germination. It occurs in the following steps. The seed coat splits, a tiny root grows downward, and a shoot grows upward. This produces a seedling of a plant, which ultimately grows into a new plant. After some time, the plant bears flowers. The flowers produce fruits, and the fruits have seeds in them. All seeds can germinate when sown in moist soil under suitable conditions to produce new plants. By natural or man made processes, these seeds are sown into the soil again, and that is how new plants are born.
Okay, so teachers, you have heard this dialogue of the artist, whosoever was speaking. Now I come back to let's hear the process. Okay, this was my second step for this activity based learning. So, in the first step, I had asked you some diagnostic assessment. I had done a diagnostic assessment. Now I have given you the knowledge on the process because I'm here doing it virtually with you. Had I been with you in the classroom or when you were doing this topic with your students in the classroom, you definitely give them some seeds and you ensure that it germinates and it grows, right? So that is your activity that you do. And then the third part is you can do this activity when you are in the classroom. You can do something like this. You can design seed germination experiment of maybe two types of seeds, three types of seeds, and see how the process of germination differs in the different types of seeds. You can also go for seed dissection to the second group. So maybe the first group does that, the second group does this, and the third group discusses has a on the different germinating factors. They can have a project based learning. So when you are going to perform all these activities, you have shown them the video, they have done this practically demonstration they have done. Now you are going to assess these activities. These can be some of the assessment techniques. That is, while the experiment is going on, there can be an observational journal in which the student or the learner writes down what is happening. That is, record the observation. How many days, what is the change, how is the cotyledon growing, how is the plumule or the radicle coming up or going down, and can also analyze the data. They can draw a graph, okay, and show that what time this first seed took in comparison to the second seed, so they can analyze the data. And they can also present their findings to their friends. That will be part of a demo kind of a thing. The When you do the seed dissection, you label the diagram. When you are doing the seed dissection, you can provide the students with a blank diagram, and when they are actually dissecting, what they can do is they can label the diagram. This is the seed coat, this is the plumule, this is the radicle. They can just do the performance and they can write it down. They can go through question and answer. You can create a quiz and you can ask them questions based on that. They can also write a short report summarizing their observations and understanding of the seed dissection process, how they did, what was the challenge, what was soft, what was hard, so they can write a report. Okay. what did the person prick? Was there any challenge that it was not opening? Did it open better while it was soaked, or did it open easily while it was not soaked or it was dry? So these kind of questions you can give as a checklist or as a questionnaire, and the person, the child, the learner can do. When you are doing a project with a third group, that is germinating factor experiment, you can have questions like, ask the students to create a table or a graph and compare the germination rates of growth patterns of seed under different conditions. Like, if there is no sunshine, is the seed growing? If there is a lot of water in the pot, is the seed growing? If the seed is deep inside the soil, will the seed grow? You also did, okay, some of our teachers are writing that I have done this in my class. Yes, I did this in my class, I also did this in my class. And they can have a presentation, have students present their experimental design and data, and bring it to the class. So for the three different sets of activities, we have got three different types of assessments conducted. See, when we said that we are conducting the assessment based on the activities that we are giving, we have not brought in here the factor of marks at all. Hello? Yes.
Yes,
So,
yes, you're audible.
yeah. So, you are bringing in a lot of factors that you are judging while the learner is actually in the process of learning. So, it is also a matter of self evaluation. Sometimes you have given a question, and when the child was going through the process, the learner was going through the process, the learner did not observe that. But it is very critical as a learner to know, and you as a teacher know, that this part the child must know. The child should be able to differentiate between what is an apigeal germination, what is an hypogeal germination. If the child observes where is the cotyledon in the two types of seeds, child will remember it for the life, right? So it is like, yes, some teacher has shared over here investigation, right? So when we are designing an activity based learning, it is for us to invest a lot of time so that our students go through each and every learning data point, right? Now, coming to another topic, like for example, if I tell you to teach addition to, suppose, a grade 1 child, what will you do to teach addition to a grade 1 child? Can you just write down an activity, one activity, how you are going to teach addition to a grade 1 child? One or two teachers can share, and then we can take it ahead. Picture addition, okay, very nice. Use objects, yes, because that develops the gross and fine motor skills. Yes, thank you so much. Similar is an activity that I have brought here. So you can use these kinds of, like example, the jelly beans, the chocolate chips, three, four different kinds of simple chocolates that you always get from the birthday girls or the birthday boys. You just can collect it in four cans, and while you teach activities, you can give them in small bowls. Addition, like how you have said, right? So you can begin it by these processes, introduction, by giving them a concept of what is addition, how are you going to group and bring them together. Place small piece of candies, for example, three in one bowl and four in another bowl, and take them from one bowl to another bowl. You put them and say, what is the total number now, what is the combined number now? So gradually, step on step, you can ask them, from the learning that has happened to the motor skills. Now you can take them to the board, or now you can give them some more objects, and you can ask them, now you bring three articles, add with them four more. So gradually, what they were doing through the activity, now it is going to the concrete numbers. And when they go to the numbers, the higher order, that is imagination, thinking of the numbers in front of their eye, when they have already developed an expertise on that, they can go and, with the fingers, or maybe just by imagining the sticks in the mind, they can tell you simple additions. So you have to plan how you are going to take the steps that you are going to follow to improve. However, just giving them a notebook and giving them some sums will not be very effective. They'll not be able to do. Some people will develop fear. And also, while you give them questions, can you make some real life connections? Like, suppose, for example, I went to the uh, shop to buy pencils, and I brought three pencils and four erasers and five pens and two sketch pens. In this way, if you give different articles and tell them, so how many total things did I buy, uh, they will be able to do. Suppose, for example, two students of class 1A, two students of class 1B, how many students are there in all? So, some real life connections they'll be able to count. How many tiles are there on the floor? How many leaves are there on this branch? So, some real connection, if they can just count and see the objects instead of always giving them artificial objects, will be very helpful. Yes. Through the classroom situation, counting how many boys and girls are there in the class. Yes. How many are there in a row, and then two rows, then three rows. In this way, in the entire class, how many boys and how many girls are there. Also, we have to, for advanced learners, we can introduce larger numbers easily. But for the learners who are struggling, we have to first give them the analogy through the small ones and then go to the larger ones. For the kinesthetic learners, they can physically combine and do it very fast. It becomes very easy for them. Assessment, they can observe the students as they work with the candies and assess their understanding of addition, evaluate the ability to write and solve sentences, and assess the ability to apply in a real world situation. So, what you can do is you can just keep a record on your own. That is your direct observation, whether they are able to do it or not as an individual one. The students can make portfolios. They can, you can make a checklist and the rubric as well, or you can make measure specific skills. For example, are they able to skills understand and recognize the particular letter? Are they able to write the words for those digits? Do they have a number sense, that is the place value, whether they are able to put it or not? So you can measure certain specific skills in your rubric. That will also help. So bringing to you about five senses, if you can quickly share how you'll be teaching five senses for very small children. Five senses. You talk about the five senses. How will you teach them in the classroom? I'll read out the responses, teachers. By activity, poem, blindfold activity,
Blindfold
demonstration,
activity, by role
rhymes,
play, activity, facial expression, story, go to
go to the
garden,
garden.
flashcards.
Okay, very
Yeah.
nice. Thank you so much. So we can see over here, we can bring a lot of aligning with the work model. Sorry, aligning with the five senses. We can bring, yes, some teachers are telling tasty food. Yes, so aligning with our five senses, we can bring things like, for example, soft toys, rough sandpaper, sweet candy, something fragrant, a fragrant flower or a perfume, maybe a noisy toy, right? So there can be different types of things. You can make them blindfold and you can ask them to touch and understand. So you can give them five different kinds of food which have distinctly different tastes, and you can ask them to record after eating when the blindfold is on. They, or at least they can tell you if they're very small and they cannot write, that this is sweet, this is tangy, this is sour, this is bitter. So they can express the tastes, and then gradually you can go from the to the concrete learning. So this is a simple activity that can be designed, and the students go through them. And you can also do a sense scavenger hunt. Divide the students into group and let them go on a scavenger hunt to find the objects that corresponds to each of these five senses. For example, they may look for something soft, something sweet to taste, and something loud to hear. Okay, they can have a sense journaling. Students create journal to record their observation about the senses. So what we are focusing on over here is a student centered approach. If you see, everything is being done by the students. Your role lies in the designing part that is outside the classroom, and which is the most critical. What are the students doing? They are learning it by doing. They are experiencing and just journaling down their experience. So when they are journaling, they are investigating. They are able to critically analyze it, and they are able to comprehend what they are thinking or what they are feeling or what they are tasting in the journals. So through action lab books is what teachers are writing. If I may read a few more. Do the body touch with identity and explain the sense organs through a chart in the picture. For taste, sense of taste, reciting a poem with action. Yeah, very nice. Through action lab books, experiential learning, it's a very strong tool to teach senses. If you can take them to the rock, and if you can take them to the muddy soil where they can wear gloves and you can take necessary precautions, they can touch, and they can even touch the different kinds of leaves and say this is soft and this is very rough. So this can be one kind of experiential learning can be definitely supportive. So assessments can be observation, questioning, projects, portfolios, checklists and rubrics, informal assessments and standardized assessments. So this was about the assessments and how we can take. See, till now I have nowhere discussed anything regarding marks. But what we have to, for activity based learning and assessment, what we have to consider is it is a holistic approach, overall development, and not absolutely the academic achievement. We have to have an authentic assessment, like use methods that reflect the real world tasks. Ongoing, it has to be continuous and child centered approach that is involve the students in the assessment process to promote self awareness and ownership of the learning, right? So we have done a lot of discussion on that. Now a little bit of break for you to think something different from the topic. How many animals do you see very fast? How many animals do you see here? You can just write it down. If you find one, two, three, four, just you can write the name or the number six, seven. Okay, five, two, four. Yeah, five, three, two, five, six, five, seven, 3, 9, 10, 11 elephant. 4, 6, 7, 5, 6, 5. Oh God. See one picture and so many answers. Therefore, while giving an answer, while giving a feedback, it is very important who is giving the feedback to you is based on what the person is assessing in you. Like Warren Buffett says that feedback is critical for self development. It's very important. So ask someone you trust for feedback and then accept it as a gift. So how you are seeing is what you are judging and is what you are speaking. Therefore, feedback giving and feedback taking is very, very critical. When you give effective feedback, you have to ensure that it is specific and constructive. Focus on words, not on the student. Be very specific and give constructive suggestions, what you can do. At the end, I'll come to what is constructive suggestion. You have to give feedback which is timely. Okay, you have not to delay, because then the process, essence of the process, the importance of the process ends. You have to use a variety of method. It should not be only written or it should not be only verbal. It can be a lot of things. It has to be a very positive reinforcement, and that is the reason why we started with the roses or the glows first. You have to highlight on the strengths and offer encouragement, right? You have to also give a two-way, encourage questions and listening activity. You have to be a listener also when the other person is telling you something. So feedback is uh, something that is very critical because it is for self development. When you are giving a feedback, it should not be one generic form that you are like this. No, it is a very differentiated approach. Students are different. Therefore, you have to tailor the feedback on individuals, not on a general. You can give general few observations what you have made. However, when it actually comes to giving a feedback, it has to be very specific, and you have to provide you have to bring in complete assessments of what you have seen. Where are the places where the child can improve? That's your feedback to an individual. And also, you have to use certain jargons, you have to use certain words. Like, instead of your essay is messy and hard to read, you can write your essay has some great ideas, but it could be improved by using clear organization and very specific examples. This can be your way to encourage the child. Actually, you are improving the child, but you are not telling that it was wrong. You are not trying hard enough. Never say that. You say that I have noticed that you have been struggling with the concept. Let's work together to find some strategies that can help you. See, you are telling this that you are doing it. It's the same thing that you are wrong. That's what you are saying. But see, the approach is very different. Your answer is wrong. Don't say that. You say your answer is close, but there seems to be a small error in the calculation. Let's review the steps together and find the mistake. Instead of you are not good at math, say that math can be challenging, but practice and a different approach can improve. Let's try a different strategy to solve a problem. Okay, your experiment was a failure. Never say that. You can say your experiment provided valuable data, even though the results may not have been what we had expected. Let's analyze the data together to understand what might have influenced the outcome. That means what went wrong, you did not say. You said what might have influenced the outcome, what changed the outcome. Instead of you didn't follow the instruction, in that appears very harsh and rude, you say let's review the instructions together. That means what are you doing? You are actually taking the child again to rethink. You're scaffolding, you're giving the child a prompt to and a chance also to improve. Instead of telling your hypothesis was wrong, say that your hypothesis was interesting. As an interesting starting point, let's discuss what supports us to make it better. So just by changing the sentences, we have not been harsh. However, we have said what you had to say. Let's end with what's a feedback loop. Its feedback loop is when you have given a feedback, you have to ensure that the child has to do something on that. The child has to take some actionables and bring it to a correction. So the feedback loop, you giving a feedback and child does or doesn't do, it's on the child, let me leave it, will not work. The feedback loop should be completed, and that's where the child will improve, and you as a educator or a teacher will be satisfied. And that's all for today. Thank you for your time. Yes, over to you, Shubham.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, teachers, for the participation and and your engagement. Basically, I was going through your chats and the discussion which you had with ma'am, and throughout the session, I have seen like they were continuously giving, chatting with you. So thank you, Sudeepa ma'am, for your informative and effective session. Uh, Teachers' feedback form will pop up on your screen once the webinar closes. So please take out your few minutes to provide your feedback. Your feedback really matters. Your certificate will be shared on the registered mail ID from where you have registered for this webinar. If you do not receive it by tomorrow, please reach out to your academic excellence managers. And thank you so much, Sudeepa ma'am, once again.
Thank you so much.
It was very
Thank you so
informative
much.
for me also, and thank you so much.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
all right, teachers, thank you so much for joining. Bye bye, take care. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you so much, teachers, and thank you so much, Shubham.
Thank you, ma'am.